To now resume, as many as are, that opinion will say content. The contrary not content, the contents have it.
My Lords, the next debate is time limited to 90 minutes and all backbench contributions will be limited to 10 minutes each.
Lord Singh of Wimbledon.
My Lords, the first week of June will mark the 30th anniversary of the Indian government's attack on the Golden Temple, the Vatican of Sikhs. The attack was deliberately timed to coincide with the martyrdom anniversary of the temple's founder, Guru Arjan, when the huge complex would be full to overflowing with pilgrims. Tanks and armoured vehicles were used, and on conservative estimates, well over 2,000 pilgrims were killed. Eyewitnesses told of how some who surrendered were tied up with their own turbans and shot. Other eyewitnesses outside the temple complex, including my own in-laws, described with horror how they saw groups of pilgrims being herded together and then dispatched with hand grenades. Many of the atrocities were reported in the British and world press. The President of India at the time, Singh, a Sikh, was nominal head of India's armed services, and he was not even consulted. Every June, Sikhs remember the huge loss of life and the mindless damage to the Golden Temple, the historic centre of the Sikh faith. And the question arises, why did Indira Gandhi resort to such brute force against the Sikhs? The Indian government version, unquestioningly accepted by our government, and I speak as a British Sikh, was that there were 17 wanted separatists, to use the Indian government's jargon, holed up in the Golden Temple. And they were a threat to a country of 1 billion people. The absurdity is obvious, nor does it explain why 40 other historic gurdwaras in Punjab were attacked at the same time. Sikh gurdwaras, my lords, are open to all. Why weren't the so-called separatists simply arrested by the hundreds of soldiers and police who daily entered the gurdwara for the traditional free food? My lords, what Sikhs were demanding at the time was a fair share of Punjab's river waters to irrigate their fields, and more importantly, fair treatment for all of India's minorities against growing evidence of majority bigotry. Earlier in the same year, hundreds of Muslims in Mumbai were massacred with a mob carrying banners proclaiming majorities have their rights. The true reason for Mrs. Gandhi's vindictive attitude to Sikhs stemmed from her prison conviction for electoral fraud in the election of 1975, her seizing power and imposing dictatorial rule. Her son Sanjay had married a Sikh, and she turned to Sikhs for support. Sikhs, though less than 2% of the population, were at the forefront of opposition to dictatorial rule, in which the poor, particularly Muslims, were forcibly sterilized, and others dumped in the wilderness to make Delhi a tidier place for the Asian Games. Maneka Gandhi and his wife, true to Sikh democratic traditions, openly opposed the dictatorships. Sikhs were never forgiven by Mrs. Gandhi. When she returned to office, she cynically decided to play to majority religious bigotry, first against the Muslims, and then even more vindictively against Sikhs. My lords, the June 84 carnage in the Golden Temple far exceeded in numbers and barbarity the 1919 General Dyer-led massacre at nearby Jallianwala Bagh. But even worse was to come. The widespread killing of thousands of Sikhs following Mrs. Gandhi's assassination was blamed on spontaneous mob violence. All evidence is that it was pre-planned for the anniversary of Guru Nanak's birthday. It was simply brought forward with the government-controlled All India Radio constantly inciting the killers with the words "Khoon ka badla khoon," that is, the take blood for blood. The army was confined to barracks for 3 full days to allow free rein to organized gangs carrying Sikh voters' lists and armed with identical steel rods and an unusually plentiful supply of kerosene to go around the capital in municipal buses, beating and burning male Sikhs and gang raping women and young girls. Prominent Hindus and Sikhs begged the new Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi to order troops to restore order. His chilling response was, "When a big tree falls, the ground is bound to shake." The same scenes were enacted throughout the country. We know all about the disappearances and killings in General Pinochet's Chile. A WikiLeaks document carrying a signed report from the American Embassy in India shows that more Sikhs were brutally murdered in just 3 days in 1984 than those killed in General Pinochet's 17-year rule. My Lords, let me now turn to our government's involvement as revealed in documents that have now come to light. In its initial reaction, the present government said support from Mrs. Gandhi was minimal. I beg the government to think again. In the light of evidence of persecution of Sikhs freely known at the time, a government committed to human rights must question the morality of minimal involvement in the persecution of minorities. The released documents praise Mrs. Gandhi and cast aspersions on UK Sikhs, with not one word of concern over the murder of thousands of Sikhs. My Lords, I wasn't in the least surprised to read of SAS involvement. I wrote about it at the time in the summer '84 issue of the Sikh Messenger. Nor was I surprised by evidence linking British support to Mrs. Gandhi for a £5 billion arms contract and the need to keep Mrs. Gandhi happy. In November '84, I went to see a senior cabinet minister to seek government support to end the pogrom against Sikhs. I received the reply, "Inderjit, we know exactly what's going on, but we're walking on a tightrope. We've already lost one important contract." At the time, I was a member of the UNA where we discussed the killings. The director, Malcolm Harper, formally raised evidence-based concerns with the government, asking it to support a UN inquiry into the killings. The all-party group, and I made a presentation to the all-party group on human rights, then chaired by the noble Lord Avebury. The all-party group decided to send 2 parliamentarians to investigate. The High Commission refused them visas. They appealed, saying that the visit would help improve Hindu-Sikh relations. They were again refused. Sikhs accept that today's government is in no way responsible for the mistakes of the past, but it can and must help to heal wounds. I was in Westminster Abbey this morning and heard Archbishop Desmond Tutu quote the words, "A time for healing has come." A healing of wounds has come. This is true for the wounds in the Sikh community, opened further by the new revelations. My Lords, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank many in the Hindu community who had sheltered Sikhs at the time of the killings. Others risked their lives, carefully documenting the names of Congress Party leaders inciting mobs to kill. Sikhs owe them a great debt. My Lords, 2 of the 3 main political parties in India have declared their support for an open inquiry. Even Rahul Gandhi, leading the Congress, has admitted that some Congress officials were involved in the killings. Speaking in the Indian Parliament in 2005, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh made the revealing comment, 21 years have passed and yet the feeling still persists that somehow the truth has not come out. My Lords, I urge the Government to add its support for an open, independent inquiry into the massacre or genocide of Sikhs in 1984, in the same way that the Government is backing a UN-led inquiry into the killing of Tamils in Sri Lanka. Against this, all offers of government assistance and offers to talk to Sikhs pales into an unnecessary distraction. 83,000 Sikhs gave their lives supporting Britain in the two world wars. In comparison, giving public support for an open UN-led inquiry is a small ask. Not to do so will give a clear message to Britain's 500,000 Sikhs and to others concerned with human rights that the UK government is ambivalent and selective on issues of human rights. As director of the network of Sikh organisations, the oldest and largest grouping of Sikhs in the UK, and the more recently formed Sikh Council, I offer my full and unconditional support to the government to help end the 30-year nightmare suffered by Sikhs. We are confident that our government will not let us down.
My Lords,